Hi, y'all. It's Rick again here with Uncommon Communion. Glad you're with me as I post a late in the day reflection. Whew, it has been a busy few days. I'll share that with you here shortly after we begin, as we always begin, by remembering and leaning into the reality that we are always and everywhere in the holy presence of God and each other. So, I've been wanting to record for a few days now. In fact, I wanted to record on Monday as I prepared for Tuesday, but here we are, Wednesday, almost Thursday. So, busy week. I had in mind one topic for this evening, which is where I'm going to start because it will catch you up to date with where I've been, what I've been up to the last couple of days. I did want to add something because just a little while ago, as I was preparing dinner, I was listening to a podcast about a topic that actually I was teaching about today. It was as part of my training. And it reminded me of an article that I had seen that I'll be sharing with you and commenting on. So, as I mentioned, Monday and Tuesday were really quite busy because yesterday, Tuesday, here in Ohio, it was election day. Now, there was not much on the ballot at all. We had one statewide initiative that was about infrastructure, funding roads and bridges that ended up passing by like 70%. So, quite a majority of voters. Some of the local municipalities had school issues. There were primaries for school board and a couple other minor things. That said, it was still an election. And I may have shared here before that I very much enjoy actually working the polls for elections. And I was going to give you a long reflection on either Monday night or even last night after I did work at the polls. But I needed to get to bed early Monday night. And then on yesterday, I was just too tired. So I had to go to bed early. Regardless, I can just say this that working the polls for me is a great way to be of service and also a great way to meet people and the people that you work with. It's a long day here in Ohio. In addition to the setup the night before, which is about 2 hours, the day starts sharp at 5:30 a.m. and it does not end until the polls close at 7:30 p.m. or even later, like 8:30 or 9, when you have all the work to do, all the tallying and totaling and securing and all of those things. So it's a very long day. In the past, when I have worked, I've really enjoyed talking to the other workers because these are folks that I may not have a lot of conversations with in my day to day life because it's a cross section of folks in the community. It's also really interesting for me to see the local precinct or precincts. A lot of times there's multiples coming in. You get to really see the people who are right there in that neighborhood. And I don't work at my local precinct in part because, quite honestly, the building where they work, the room that they work is really, really small. And being in that windowless room all day would drive me pretty crazy, quite frankly. So where I was yesterday and where I have been on other days has been more wide open and definitely more conducive to fresh air and being able to see out. Nevertheless, it is quite a day. It was quite a day yesterday. I came home pretty exhausted. I woke up this morning feeling also still pretty tired and also feeling a bit of resentment this morning, which is not a good feeling for me. That is not a feeling I like. But you know what? God came through. In my previous podcast that I used to, that I think I've talked about here, it's called the Presence Podcast. And in the year 2018, every single day I recorded an audio podcast, usually at the end of the day. And on that podcast, I talked about what I call GPMs, which are God present moments. And these are basically times where I'm going through my life and I see something and I just recognize I'm paying attention. I recognize it and I say, yeah, that is God present, communicating to me. And this morning was very much the case. Listen to this, y'all. This is kind of amazing. So was feeling this resentment. I was running late and getting out of the house. I was doing a training that I don't usually lead. I was helping someone out who's on vacation. I was thinking, why did I do this? And all this just stuff is going through my head. And I had to walk my dog. Fortunately, the day was really quite nice. Yesterday, as I was sitting inside for, 14 plus hours, it rained almost all day, kind of a raw, soaking rain. Just to wake up this morning and not see rain was really quite nice. So I left the house, walking my dog, and across the street, just down a couple of houses, I saw a man I didn't recognize. I'd not seen this man before, but he was standing out at the end of the driveway, and he was holding a very small baby. I could just barely see the baby's head over the little bundle that he was holding. And what I noticed was he was standing next to a tree. The sun was still pretty low in the sky because it had just risen. And the tree, the sunlight was shining through this tree in just this really amazing way. And I wanted to take a photo. I really did. But I was running late. I didn't want to, stop and take that moment to do that. And quite honestly, I'm kind of glad I didn't, because it was such an amazing moment that I can capture it up here. Sharing it with you, showing it to the world, it wouldn't have the meaning that it gave to me, that tableau, that moment. So I was very respectful. I kind of turned my dog a little bit short of where we would cross right over to him. I didn't say anything, just kind of said hello. And I did ask, I had to ask, you always have to ask, how old is that baby? And he said, a few days old, which was like, wow. I mean, this baby showed it. And then he said something that really brought a smile to my heart, and really, yeah, that's you, God. That's you, God, saying this. And that was, he said, I'm giving her some sunlight therapy. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what you're doing. That's exactly what I would have said. And it was just amazing. So I turned and walked, and it really changed my mood. It changed my attitude. And it didn't necessarily make me any more excited about having to teach today. I certainly would have liked to have just gone back in and gone back to bed if I could have. I had a commitment and went and taught. And it turned out to be a really good day teaching, in part because I got to talk about something I feel very, very strongly about. And this is the thing that I heard on this podcast that I also wanted to share with you here. And it has to do with empathy. So a little bit of background. I've shared here before that I work for an agency that supports intellectually and developmentally disabled folks. These folks, oftentimes, some of them cannot use words. They're nonverbal. A lot of times these folks get escalated. And as their emotions build, especially if they can't communicate the emotions, they can become what appears to be violent, hitting and kicking and spitting and grabbing and self-injurious behavior, all kinds of stuff. So we have 3 crisis de-escalation techniques that we use agency-wide, and I am certified to train on all 3 of those. And the one today, it has the motto is kind of twofold. It says there's two tasks. The first task is to build rapport, which is a relationship, and then the second task is to use that rapport. And not surprisingly, the way that we build that rapport and the way that our staff, who are frontline workers working with these individuals, and mostly in this case residential settings, they are in relationship. And we are in relationship, and the way they are in relationship is through applied empathy, right? Where we try to understand what the other person is feeling, try to understand and to support them in that, and try to understand from a sense of love, which is desiring and willing the good of the other, to try to really be able to do that. So I was teaching this today and I love to teach this because I feel at the heart, at my core, my heart, a passion for this. I don't teach in a religious environment anymore. I did that for 18 years, theology in Catholic high schools. And today, as I taught about love and empathy and the importance of that, I felt like I was teaching the gospel, because that is the gospel, right? That is what Jesus says. You don't believe me? I'm going to read it to you here in just a moment. The reason I'm sharing this, and I don't want to say too much about this because If you want to read more about it, you can. If you want to listen to it, you can listen to podcasts. It's something, though, we need to know. If we are citizens, if we are followers of the way of Christ, whatever it might be, there is an anti-empathy movement out there. There are books that are getting a lot of attention from so-called Christian nationalists, hippo Christians, as I call them, with titles like "Empathy is a Sin," "Empathy is a Disease," and there's the podcast that I was listening to, and the article I'm going to link to, really basically said there's kind of two different ways. There's a way that they justify this. And again, I can't understand this, knowing the Bible, knowing the gospel, knowing what I'm about to read to you. I just don't get it. They have a logic, though, quote unquote logic. And the logic is this, is that, if people, citizens, other Christians, anybody, are doing compassion, empathetic things, actions, policies towards people who, again, these hippo Christians believe are violating God's laws about, immigration, God's laws about a woman's right to choose, God's law about whatever, right? If people are supporting those, then they are violating. Even if they're using empathy, the empathy is leading them wrongly, sinfully in their view, because it is leading them to break God's laws. So that's their rationale on this, right? And again, I don't get it. I reject it completely. I don't know what Bible they're reading. I certainly don't think they're reading the Sermon on the Mount. I'm going to read it to you here in a second. But that's how they theologically justify it. But what this article also went on to say, and again, you can read it if you'd like, is that really they are just giving a permission and a moral structure for Christians, quote unquote, to be able to support the absolutely cruel and shameful and just very, very wrong, unlawful policies of Donald Trump. So they're basically creating this permission structure that basically says, well, you don't have to, empathy is bad, supporting Trump is good, so therefore you can continue to do that. It's just an absolute, I could use profanity here, I try not to here, but it's an absolute mind, whatever. You can fill in the words there. And again, y'all, that's out there. And I know that we are called always, 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 always to lead with love, to lead with empathy, and to have empathy towards people that voted for T-Rump. I just saw this, and this will be my last point, just saw this recently, that as T-Rump's approval numbers have plunged, the group that they have plunged the most with is the group he really went after, which is those low propensity voters, those low information voters. They are the ones who disapprove of him the most. So there is, I think, an opportunity as we meet those people in our lives, especially young people, especially men who are kind of caught up in this whole, whatever thing of masculinity. I think we must show empathy and compassion for them as we seek to lead them to a better place with our nation, with our future, and do it with empathy, do it with love. All right. So in case anyone needs this, let's hear what Jesus himself said, as Matthew tells us in his gospel. Again, I quote from the indigenous translation. You've seen a link to this. And this is in the Sermon on the Mount. And a quick little background, what Jesus is doing in the Sermon on the Mount is he's taking what is in Jewish teaching, his religion, the religion that he knew and the people who were listening to him knew, and he's building on that. He's saying, this is the starting point. You must go further. You must go a lot further. And this is what he says. He says, you have been told to love your own people and to despise others as your enemy. But I tell you, treat your enemies with love and respect, and send up good prayers for the ones who make trouble for you and bring you pain. This will show that you are mature children of your Father from above, who sends his blessing of rain on the ones who do right and the ones who do wrong. My emphasis. If you love and show respect only to the ones who do the same, how does that even honor you? Even tribal tax collectors do these things. If you welcome only friends, how are you different from others? Even outsiders from other nations do these things. By loving and blessing all people, you will be walking in the footsteps of your Father from the spirit world above, who is perfect in all his ways. And many translators say that last little bit, that perfect in all his ways, is perfect in love. So where we get elsewhere in the Gospels, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect, that is, be perfect in love. There it is, y'all. That's our challenge. That's our prayer. That's what we need to be about, especially in these times. Appreciate y'all listening. We'll be back hopefully with more regular reflections. We'll be back with a written post tomorrow. I'm going to get started on that right now. Blessing and good. Be well.